Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Time for convening having arrived. All members will take their seats. Always like that little chant. Good to see everyone this morning. I know we've got some that are hung up in traffic. I've had a couple phone calls this morning, folks that are trying to get here. And the thing we get to enjoy is that it's just going to get worse for the next week and a half as we get closer to the Super Bowl. So anyway, it is time to start. And our first guest this morning, of course, is our Chief Justice, Harold Melton, with the Georgia Supreme Court. He and several of the other judges and justices of the Appellate Court Division are here with us this morning. And so, Justice Melton, the podium is yours.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me and inviting me. I'm here with some of my colleagues that I think you'll recognize, Presiding Justice Namias and Justice Boggs, and we have members of our staff here as well. We're also fortunate enough to have our friends from the Court of Appeals, Chief Judge Steve Dillard, and I see Judge Doyle and Judge McFadden and some of their staff as well. But thank you for inviting us. We are invited here to provide an update on, as I understand it, the new judicial building and update on our Supreme Court budget and budget items within the judiciary as a whole. First and foremost, I do want to start off by thanking the staff of the House and Senate that we've had the privilege of dealing with over the years. Melody DeBrucy and Andrew Zoll have been great people to work with. They've taken particular interest in our budgets and have been very helpful, and been Brian Groom on the House side as well. But let's start off first with the new judicial building, the judicial complex, and then I'll get into some of the budget items, and then finish up with the judicial building with a little bit more detail. The first thing we need to say about the judicial building is thank you. It is a beautiful building. We don't take it for granted that you have invested in us. You have sent a signal to us about what you expect of us. And we look at that building going up every day, and I suspect as we walk into it on a daily basis, we'll be reminded about what our citizens have demanded. They want us to walk in and take our job very seriously. It stares up slightly, looks up to this building. It looks at you with a reasonable and healthy bit of deference, but then we square you off and are ready to do business when necessary. And so I think it sends a healthy signal. But the majesty that it represents is a reminder to us of the duty that you expect us to fulfill. So thank you very much. And so with that in mind, that building also has informed the budget of the Supreme Court. You'll see that both for the amended budget in 19 and the FY 2020 budget, that the Supreme Court has requested no new money. Everything in both budgets is pass-through money or formula funding. And I can give you details about what those requests are, but for the amended FY19 budget, we have a $22,000 increase, which represents 0.15% of our budget. For the FY 2020 year, the formula funding and pass-throughs result in a $420,000 increase. And again, without even asking for new money, that results in a 2.9% increase. It tells you how lean our budget is, just with pass-throughs and formula funding. And by pass-through, just as an example, we have a state trooper who's assigned to us. That bill is a pass-through. The rent that we pay on the building is a pass-through. The per diems that we pay our judges that are outside the radius, that's a formula funding. And then the National Center for State Courts, those are really our pass-throughs. And just the increases in that result in a 2.9% increase in our overall budget. We do ask in our budget for an increase because there's one pass-through that we didn't know at the time our budget was submitted that we would have to carry. Our good friend, one of our newest justices, Charlie Bethel, was appointed And at the time, we did not know that he would be appointed, but when you add him to the per diem, that results in about a $22,000 increase that we will ask you to add to our budget that we didn't have an opportunity to submit. So that really says all I think needs to be said about the Supreme Court budget. As far as other budget items within the judiciary as a whole, usually what we don't do is have the chief speak about the Supreme Court budget and the Judicial Council budget, because we think, we don't know that to be true, but we think it might create some confusion. But you've asked for me to present on both, so I will. The Judicial Council, as you know, has a white paper process. I used to chair the Budget Committee. Presiding Justice Namias now chairs he chairs the Legislative Committee. Justice Boggs chairs the Budget Committee. And the white paper process involves each of the constituent groups within the legislature presenting their budget requests to the committee, but first to Malia, who is with AOC, and she goes through them, asks for their justifications, helps them with their numbers, and then they come to the committee. The committee goes through each of the requests and votes on whether to embrace and incorporate those within the budget or not, budget requests or not. And we rank them. We rank them in order. Now, there are certain groups that aren't included in this process. The Court of Appeals, their budget's not included in this process. Judge Dillard's here. If you have questions, he stands ready and able to answer any questions you might have. The Council of Superior Court Judges is not included. Neither is the Juvenile Court Judges Council included. Don't know why. I think it has to do with a lot of historical background, but those entities aren't included in what I'm sharing with you today. But within that white paper process, that committee has considered the requests that are included in our budget, and they're ranked in order, and they're ranked in order in which I'll present these to you. Again, for the amended budget FY19, there are no new requests from the Judicial Council, AOC, no new requests, no new monies, 0% increase. For FY 2020, we asked for about $1,078,000 in enhancements, and that's an increase of about 8.37%. So the first request is is to grant funding for civil legal services to kinship care families. What this is designed to do is to identify the reality that there are a lot of parents, there are a lot of families who take care of children who are not theirs. And they don't go into foster care, and they often don't formalize the relationship, but need to formalize the relationship. They need to formalize the relationship in order to take them to school, to sign up for health benefits, to get guardianship, to be able to do any number of things that are legally required to do, and to get the paperwork to legally access the services that are available. And these are for kids who aren't in foster care but otherwise might be in foster care. So we think it's a savings to the state if we could formalize these guardianship-like relationships and enable these families and sometimes neighbors, aunts, uncles, grandparents to get the formalized documents necessary. So this will go to legal services to help formalize those relationships, and it's estimated that 1,500 or more new cases will be opened each year to provide for these services. These services will be provided within the metro area, but also outside the metro Atlanta area. And that requested amount is $750,000. The second request is from the Technology Committee, which I chair, to hire a tech support person for the gateway at the amount of $250,000. Last year, you generously funded our efforts to build a portal, a gateway. We've changed the name to Gateway because portal seems to be used elsewhere quite a bit, so we changed it to Portal. But what this is one-stop shopping for everything related to the judiciary. Right now, this portal is up and running. If you Google Georgia courts, it's what pops up. And you click on that, it will access all the e-filing services that are available at the Superior Court level that have made themselves available through that. We want that to be all services. Right now, all services aren't on that, but we want that to be all services. We're still working towards that. It's translatable into 50 languages. It's also ADA compliant. If you want to find out any information as it relates to magistrate courts or juvenile court or municipal courts, anything, it's all there. But now that it's built, we need to support it and make sure that we keep up with updates. And so that request is for $250,000 for the person to be responsible for those duties. Then the last request is from the Supreme Court Committee on Justice for Children, and that is to support the court process reporting system. You have supported our request in this regard each year. The CPRS system allows for real-time sharing of child welfare information from the juvenile court systems and executive branch agencies with DFACS. One of the things that's new this year is that the SAGs, the Special Assistant Attorneys General, will be required to upload court orders and other critical data online on a real-time basis. This is going to be really important because this will facilitate the transmission of that information to the federal government. The sooner that information gets transmitted to the federal government, the sooner we get our drawdowns. We get reimbursements. One of the things that's held up our reimbursement requests is getting orders submitted in time. So we do think this will be a cost savings to the state. Those are our three requests to you of this year from the Judicial Council representing most of the judiciary. Lastly, I'll return to the judicial building and go into a little bit more detail, and then I'll pause for any questions that you might have. Again, we're extremely thankful. This is the first building of its kind in this state dedicated to the appellate courts. It will house, of course, the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, the Reporter of Decisions, and the Office of Bar Admissions. We have worked in close unity with Chief Judge Dillard on the Court of Appeals, so everything that I say to you in this regard, I'm speaking for both courts. He's expressly authorized me to say that. The timeline for the building began. We began in construction on August 25 of 2017. Material completion is expected to take place on early November of 2019. Material completion means that you can start moving in, but there's still going to be workers walking around. That's what I understand that to mean. Move-in to be finished by mid to late December. We'll be up and running by January of 2020. And we are planning to have you over and show you around, walk you around, and let you see what you've invested in about this time next year. So we expect to have you as our guest. The courts recently attended a topping off ceremony in November, which marked the material completion of the exterior. And as you might know already, it's really a ceremonial event honoring the workers. And the goal for both courts as we move forward to nail down the details for building out and furnishing the building is this. Like I said before, we don't take what you've given us for granted. We are constantly working with the architects and the contractors to reduce costs and come in an efficient manner, and we're lowering costs wherever possible. We want it to be appropriately stately. We want it to be made to last. Everything in there, we want to be made to last. We do not want to be extravagant. We are staying away from the West Virginia model. And if you haven't been aware of that, you can Google what we're not going to do. We are staying away from West Virginia. The working space for the appellate courts is designed to be for the next 100 years, so we do want things to be sturdy. And the space does provide for future growth, largely for Court of Appeals staff. The idea is potentially to increase central staff, but probably not judges, but we have flexibility there. In the amended 18 budget, you again generously allocated $8.6 million to the GBA, Georgia Building Authority, to build out furniture, fixtures, and equipment for the new building. We're not going to spend all that money. We're not going to spend all that. We're going to take all the old furniture that we have that's sturdy that won't fall apart, that still looks good. We're taking all that over. Our assumption is we're going to take as much as we can and then build out from there. There's some new common areas in the new building. Well, of course, we'll need new furniture for those common areas. There's some furniture that we have is just not good furniture. We're going to be very judicious in ordering new furniture. As we go about setting out how we're going to do carpet and window treatments, we're not going to have each judge customize and personalize their own offices. We're going to have a set of 3 different options, and you can pick off the menu which ones you want. And that will cut out from new judges coming in as we move offices around, somebody coming in and saying, okay, now this is what I want, and have to undo and then put in a bunch of new redesign. And we're going to avoid those expenses on a basis going forward. We are looking at coming in not only beneath the $8.6 million that was allocated, but even the quotes that have been given to us, we're looking at coming in below those numbers as well. What that's going to allow us to do is not come to you for moving costs, which we thought we would have to do, and it's going to allow us to not come to you for IT. The IT costs for wiring and the switches and network things that we're putting into the new building, we thought we'd going to have to come to you. We're going to be able to bring that in within the 8.6, which you already have provided to us. There's a lot more detail about how we've accomplished that and how we intend to continue to accomplish that, but that's the big picture. I think that's the guts of what you might want to hear, but I'll pause and open myself up and my colleagues for any questions that you might have.
We're going to have a couple of questions. I've got a first question. On the topping out ceremony, did Justice Boggs ride the beam up with the crane as it went up to the top? Was he on there?
He declined. We tried to tell him it was a Bronco bull, but he didn't buy it.
There was a vote, I lost.
You know,
it was cold, Mr. Chairman. I will tell you that. I was asked to share a few words, but they never quite handed me the microphone. It was cold.
Yep. All right. Chairman Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May it please the court.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I appreciate the efforts that you spoke about being very judicious with the money that this body has appropriated for you to take care of the furnishings of that building. However, as I sit in this room, I look around and most people realize that this used to be the Supreme Court of Georgia that we're in right now.
That's right.
And I am so glad that when they built this Capitol and built this room, they made it look the way they did because it looks appropriate. Not extravagant, but it looks appropriate. So I would, once again, appreciate the efforts to save money, but I also want to make sure that in this almost once-in-a-lifetime effort for many of us, as we build that new building, that when I walk into your office or an intern does or anybody, that the desk matches the surroundings. I would not want you to take furniture from that old building that we're getting rid of now or going to transfer and do something else with and not use the money that we've appropriated to make that building look what we want it to be for the taxpayers of Georgia. Because just when I walk in here, I have a little awe. I want it to be that way when I walk into your office or any other judge's office. So I would encourage you to make sure that you use that money, and let's make it the building that the people of Georgia will be very proud of.
Thank you, sir. We do welcome that input.
And any shortcoming you may have on that, I think Representative Fleming's willing to make up out of his pocket. So. Okay, any other questions? This might be the only time that you get to ask the Chief Justice a question, so usually he's the one doing the asking, so y'all might want to take advantage of it. Well, don't appear to be any other questions. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Can't thank y'all enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presenter is walking in the back door, Commissioner Gary Black. And Commissioner, the podium is yours, and look forward to hearing an update from the Department of Agriculture.
beside you. From beginning. Boom. Whoa. How are you?
I'm doing
You
good.
mind hitting the button? We don't have to pass this out.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Those are going to be, because I'm not going to dwell on that, but it's part of that addition.
I was just gonna pass some out, and
Okay.
then if you'll email it to us, we'll
Your
email
call.
it to all the members.
That's great.
I'll get Brady to email it to you.
Do we advance here?
I don't know where it is, so if you can.
Let's see. Let's do this.
Too annoying.
We got to be live up there, though. Let's see.
This to me.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm working
No
on getting
signal.
a copy of it now.
Appreciate it.
Morgan.hall? Okay, yeah, I'll get it to you. To help pass those out, or?
If you'll grab that so I'll get this side. Oh, they're different.
Maybe just a copy to each, everybody on the dais, and then, I don't know, what the best way to do it. I thought we were following some stuff. So this is just a hard copy of our slides.
Okay.
I'm trying to appeal to the soccer moms that's in there.
Here, I'll pass it out.
I'm all- Let's- Mr. Chairman, we'll have the overhead projector ready in just a moment. We're going back to slides. Maybe that'll work. Says I have a signal.
It says it's sending out the signal.
Mr. Chairman, we'll keep
As
going.
always, computers making our life simpler, so.
Yes, sir.
yeah.
So much for that. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today, and to this committee, we thank you for the help you've given us over the course of this time, and it's a pleasure to, kind of hard to believe, be the 9th time to be able to stand up and do this work with you, and we look forward to a great 2019. Perhaps the technology will come up in just a moment, but if not, we'll provide, we'll certainly have the hard copies for the committee as some of this detail, and I think, Mr. Chairman, you may have that in front of you. I'm sorry we didn't bring a hard copy for everybody. We thought this would work. But we're pleased to present a little bit on 2019 and 2020 and a couple of extra reports for you this morning, and I'd love to entertain your questions. You will hear a theme out of us for the next 4 years that I hope will resonate. I believe it's important. We're building, we think it's important to focus for the 11 million Georgians and certainly for those of you who are making the decisions about our joint and our shared future, is that we believe we in agriculture at this department and as an agency, those who provide food and fiber for all of us, and we believe we make life better for every Georgian every day. That's what our goal is. That's what keeps us going. We have adopted 7 principles. You will hear this as a theme over the next 4 years, and this theme is what we intend to, how we intend to operate. That we will be guided by these principles, and I hope that I believe you embrace these. I don't believe we have any. We may have some different paths from time to time, but I believe as core principles, these are things that you believe in because you've supported us in these efforts. Number one, we believe that Georgians must commit to a competitive career path for all of our employees. I think that cuts across many agencies, but the one that we're responsible for, our employees are first on this list of priorities moving forward the next 8 years, next 4 years. Georgians must commit, I believe, We're the #1 state in America to do business. I'm excited that the governor's committed this to be the #1 state in America for small business. I believe we should also be the #1 state in America where local food systems flourish. That means that ties in with our branding program. There's some creative things going on in school nutrition, some outstanding things that are going on with our restaurants and all across the state. But what that means is local opportunity for local producers. And we ought to be #1 in that. I think we're doing pretty good. We ought to commit to being #1 and measure that progress. Number 3, Georgia must commit to maintaining a regulatory environment that helps people get in business and then helps them stay in business. That's a regulatory perspective that we share. Sometimes there's a third leg of that stool where somewhere the government says, well, y'all put me out of business. Well, there is discipline. That's why we pass laws. There's things that we are responsible for public health, for the things that are awesome. Oh, golly. That's not good. Trying to find the pointer. There we go. How about that? We want to make sure at this age that we have a regulatory environment where we help people get in business, help them stay in business. Then we're going to be responsible for all 11 million Georgians to apply the discipline properly. But these things go together, and that's a core principle of ours. Georgia animals must be healthy and safe. That means on the companion animal side, but also means in animal agriculture. There's a big responsibility we have there. Georgia must commit to enhancing domestic and international markets. Y'all have helped us do that. We're holding true to some of the investments that you made through rural development last year, and I look forward to reporting on that in just a moment. Moving forward, too, we must also be the best state in America, the most prepared state in America for natural disaster, for emergency management responses that are affecting the food supply and affecting our people, how all this relates together. I believe we're pretty good. I believe in many areas, particularly with our response the last couple of years and how we've increased our capability on things like highly pathogenic avian influenza and how we respond, how we work with industry, how we protect the economy moving forward. But we've got to always be sure all of us commit together that we're #1 in that arena. And lastly, I tell you, Georgia's youth must view agriculture, forestry, food processing, and related endeavors as an area worthy of study and worthy of employment. Now, jurisdictionally, that's not exactly in our laws that you give us to enforce, but from the pulpit that we have, we're going to be sure that we're reaching out to young people more, and we want to work with the Department of Education and others in the technical and adult education, our university system, wherever. We've got to recruit that next generation that's going to be ready to serve not only in government but serve the industry, and I want you to know we're deeply committed to that. Now, some of you may know this, but I don't think we've ever presented this slide to you because from an agency we have 3 program areas from the agency standpoint, and so there's departmental administrations, consumer protection, and marketing and promotions. Those are the department's 3 program areas. And I'm happy to report to you that for 8 consecutive years in a row, and actually it was the first time ever when we started, but 8 consecutive years in a row, we are in full compliance with program-based budgeting. And we hold the discipline to that, and we're committed to that. It's not just about balancing the bottom line at the end of the year, which that's very important, but we have to stay within the lanes that you give us. And we do so. But here's what some may not know, is these are the other agriculturally related enterprises of the state that are administratively attached to us. Well, we don't exactly have we don't do the hiring and we don't do, we kind of guide. We help set up some accountability. Our CFO, Jimmy Wilson, who I believe is the best in the business, we help these other entities. So there's the Athens and Tifton Diagnostic Laboratory, the Poultry Diagnostic Laboratory in Gainesville, the Ag Expo Authority in Perry, Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission is what y'all gave to us a couple of years ago, and I think those houses a little better in order since we've been helping with that. And then the Georgia Development Authority, which you'll see a huge number here. That's what you did during special session. And again, I'm going to report to you about that in just a moment. But you see here, I mean, yes, it's a lot of money. We talk about agriculture being the largest industry in Georgia, the #1 industry, the #1 employer. Well, we make significant investments as taxpayers, and you as a legislature do so. But what I want to put an emphasis on is when we talk about our budget to you, we're only talking about 3 program areas. We work on the other ones, but we kind of invest the state's money in different areas, and I don't think we've ever adequately pointed that out to you, but I hope that gets a little clearer today. First, in the 19 amended, there's just some normal things, and y'all have seen those in the document, the little increases for insurance. Here was something that was identified because last year when we changed the GATE program and changed the funding of it, we did not appropriate any money for the additional administration. Y'all asked us to look at what it was going to take to do those, the 3-year program to administer the actual real card and those kinds of things. We've done so. I'm going to report to you about that in just a slide or two. But we did need a program manager. That's not, we raised significant amount additional funds when you doubled the fee. So there's not any, I don't think that's contemplated in any exactly a revenue estimate. And all those monies are being paid by the farmers that are using it. So the gate card is really the only, we've established as a policy, it's the only tax exemption program where the people using it are having to pay for it. And so we're hoping we can talk more and more about how we could retain those, more of those funds in our agencies simply because the farmers are the ones that are paying the bill. But there's also a $75,000 increase here for the Expo Authority that frankly, it shows up. I'm not too sure about the details on that one, but it's in the document. Here's what it is for 20 for us, and I appreciate. I look forward to talking with OPB and talking hopefully with both committees about where this number will arrive. We were told, and we submitted back in September, $927,000 because it was a 2% enhancement. And so when we talk about 2% merit pay, I honestly don't know why that number's different, and I sure love to talk about it as we move forward. I think the 927 is the one that is accurate, at least what we figured off of from when we submitted budgets in September. But what I do want y'all to know is that even though the direction we had in OPB for September was for enhancements, which maybe, expand programs or whatever you would want to do in that planning process, we were dedicating $100,000 for management training, and then the entire balance we were going to dedicate to meet Principle 1, which means helping all of our employees. There are not going to be any new programs, no new positions. We need to help our people. And so even without the direction on, merit-based pay, that's what we were going to do anyway because it's priority #1 for us, and I want y'all to know that. Some of these other just are ancillary things that happen every year, and we have those adjustments. And then the 20 budget shows some decreases in these. We also had an adjustment which annualizes that gate position that's coming up in the supplemental. That 160 of a slide or two ago, I think what this does is annualize that gate position to help us do better enforcement, plus also extra administrative. We had a lot more mail this time and getting that hard card in people's hands, and that just reflects those expenses. The 2020 also eliminates the $75 million because that was a one-time shot, and that's just that's why that's showing up as in some brackets on the 20 budget. We also have bond packages for $480,000 to replace 2 large-scale units with our fuel and measures. Those are very expensive vehicles. Those are large weights and measures vehicles. That's part of our our job. We've cannibalized enough, and it's time to buy new equipment, and it's just a big price tag when we do. We also, some of you may know, about 400 plus, 450 of our people are not in an office anywhere. They're inspecting food, they're inspecting, you know, the wide range of things of where our responsibilities are. But we have a lot of vehicles. We have over 300 plus vehicles, so we have to stay on that regular process of renewing these vehicles. That's what those bond packages are for. This, Mr. Chairman, and you and I have talked about this, and some members, this is the least, I hate to bring this one to you. It's been a point of consternation since almost the day we cut the ribbon. We do have the premier poultry veterinary diagnostic laboratory in this country, perhaps on the face of the globe. We have a great building. This has always been in Hall County. It's on the northern part. We do great work. Our team does great work. What we did not do, we as Georgia didn't do a good job of managing and building this building. This building has been leaking. It's been a problem since the day we moved in. It's been a problem since now the contractor and the design professionals, all of them are out of business too. I've been chasing the E&O coverage. I've been trying to find ways, and I wish I had a better answer for you. We did work with the governor's office. We had to move employees out of here last April because of vibrations. They were causing real problems in our BSL laboratory, which is the highly sensitive laboratory that the state needs, which we don't have now because plans were signed off on by all the design professionals. That's not, you know, if I had that responsibility, I'd be more accountable to you, but I'm real disappointed, aggravated, if you want to know, because we put, oh, doggone it. Here I go again. We worked with the governor's office. We got an assessment from mechanical engineers. There's no way in the world these plans should have ever been signed off on, but they were. And this is a $4 million problem to fix it and get it back open. Now that's not the whole lab. It's the BSL, the highly sensitive lab that is needed for particularly for our poultry industry. If we got the headroom to do that, that is on the list. Mr. Chairman, I know, and thank you and many, many members. Of course, really this entire legislature has been sensitive to the needs of rural development. There are two rural development, again, if there's opportunity for us to have these discussions, there are two projects that have come to light this past fall that I would present to you if the headroom is there for us to talk about some of these capital improvement or capital investments. At the Atlanta State Farmers Market, the Nicky Gregory Company has been there for a long, long time. I've provided for, we'll have for the entire committee a building request from Nicky Gregory's operation, which will be a $5 million expansion, a terrific deep reach into Georgia-grown produce that would open up markets that I think are worthy of consideration. It's a great business. They've been online. Here's for the members to understand. When we make an investment, our investments in bonds at farmers markets are quite a bit different than maybe some of the other capital investments that we make in the state. Because when we do a bond for a building at the farmers market, that entire bond is paid off by rent. And so ultimately there's not a cost to the taxpayer. The user of the facility pays the bond off. And that's one of the unique things about our farmers markets. Same would be true with Savannah. In-laws Produce has a great opportunity to expand, and that is right now, we've not made any investments in Savannah in a long, long time. But Steve Kaplan and his team down there, really some new doors have opened up, and their commitment to our producers here in the state is unequaled. And so there may be, again, if we have opportunity to consider those are a couple of good ones that would meet our rural development, some of those initiatives. For Gate, Mr. Chairman, move quickly. 22,100 cards have been processed so far. When we told you last year we had 39,000 cards, and we thought that the changes you made would get it down to 30,000. If you do the extrapolation of 22,000 is to where we were last year is to the ultimate number, trying to predict where we'd wind up, I think we're going to be pretty doggone close. I think we'll wind up with about 30,000 cards. We have done some incredible things. We've had 1,200 retail site visits since last April. Those are those part-time folks that you allow us to employ to educate vendors, educate retailers. That's going well, but we've made 3,100 contacts just during the National Fair in Georgia and Sunbelt Expo alone. Those are individual, accountability contacts somehow with producers or vendors. You've also invested last year a little over $1 million to expand and invest in international and domestic business development through the Georgia Grown program. We've made terrific progress. We've had trade missions. And this is incremental progress, but you have to make the impression. You have to get in the game. We've had South Korea, South Africa, and Indonesia. Some real opportunities there. Trying to work most recently on pecan. We believe we have. Until the China thing settles out, or even if the China thing settles out, we still have to. We have concentrated our portfolio just like someone would unwisely do with their retirement program, and put all our eggs in pecans in one basket, if you will. But we've got to diversify the portfolio. Indonesia holds great promise, but also Taiwan. We will be taking we have a trade mission in conjunction with USDA to Taiwan the first couple weeks of March. So we're doing domestically too. We will have been, by June, we will have been to 15 domestic trade show opportunities. First of all, that's taking some Georgia businesses, but it's also us going and scouting out which ones where do we need to go, so that we're efficient when we go. And I think we're making good progress and being good stewards of what you've given us. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, y'all invested six, 7 weeks ago, $55 million in the Safety 21 program, which is an acronym for Securing Agriculture, Food, Environment, and Timber for You. That's what we can do for our constituents, because we are doing it for them, but we're doing it for the individual landowners who are impacted by Hurricane Michael. Of that $55 million, it took us all of December working very hard, but I'm happy to report to you today that as of yesterday, our third board meeting after the completion of the program, we have already approved loans for $35.6 million, and that's representative of 124 loans. A little less than $300,000 is the average. We put a $400,000 cap on that. Those loans look like this. They're a 7-year loan with a 40-year amortization. That 40-year, so that means you have a 7-year balloon at the end of term. The first 2 years are 1%, the next 2 years are 2%, and they go up 1% a year up to term. We are requiring a 600 or higher beacon score, and we're also requiring, most importantly, a continuity agreement with their current lender. because that's what you wanted. You wanted to be sure that if we were going to do this, we needed to make sure that people could farm in 2019. Therefore, there is a strong continuity agreement with their primary lender so that we know they're going to be up for business. I think we've probably got 1 or 2 more meetings, and what you did, the money will be loaned out. Now, what happens now is that money, all of this now is on the loan application now. Once these packages are put together, then it's on them. So we're this close to having all 124 of those loan packages out our door. Then it will be responsibility of the producer to get with his local lawyer and his banker and close that deal and close it very quickly. Then we will fund those loans. So, Mr. Chairman, that's where we are today, and I hope I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm grateful for y'all your consideration, and surely hope that during this session, as always, any and all, however we can be of service to you, that's what our job is, and we look forward to it.
All right, Mr. Commissioner, thank you. And evidently the coastal delegation has some concerns about the poultry lab because the dean of the delegation down there's light lit up about the time you mentioned that. So, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for coming. I have 2 quick ones. First, I haven't noticed any indictments or anything, so we just kissed $14 million by. I'm puzzled why we have so many problems with a messed up building and no contractor, or have we held a contractor accountable? I'm wondering now, as pretty as that judicial building, I hope that doesn't happen over there. It'd be a shame for it to leak, but somebody needs to be held accountable for $14 million of taxpayers' money, and I hadn't read about them on the front page of any newspaper.
Yes, sir.
That's the first one.
Yes, sir.
The second one is thank you for doing something about the Savannah Farmers Market.
Yes, sir.
It was not a good advertisement for the Agriculture Department, and I have yet to see people just quit going, and I couldn't blame them. But
yes,
thank you. But the first part of the question first.
Yes, sir. I'm not aware of any. We've continued to work with our friends at JustFic, because that the Finance Commission, which handles the construction contracts, and they handle. And I'm not trying to shift. I don't like dodging. If I can tell you right now, if I had direct, we wouldn't have design problems if I would sure I wouldn't mind being held accountable if I was signing off on all of the plans, but I don't get to do that. And that sounds like I don't mean to be shifting, but that's just the truth. It's the most aggravating thing when we have to wait and wait and wait, and then we get something, and then we have problem after problem after problem. The only reason we discovered this $4 million problem is because of other problems of roof leaks that would not stop. When we finally insisted that we get up and rip out some things, which that's what we were doing, just saying we have employees up there and not putting employees in danger. And we need to make sure that we got that problem pretty much solved, but in the process we started saying, okay, because the BSL lab is sealed. It's it's just the highest security lab. It's what you would be dealing with highly pathogenic avian influenza. You can't walk around and it's got this room will not hold a seal because of the air handling. And then we get in here and there's been a design that's been approved that has 3 right-hand turns in the air handling. And those right-hand turns were just shaking, and we had to get employees out of there last April. And we've asked the Attorney General to look at it. I have searched and searched and searched to try to see what is the state's policy on errors and omissions, whose E&O could we tap to, and I'm told there's none available to us.
My vice chairman, who went to the trade school down here on 14th Avenue, is saying that the problem is we needed more Georgia Tech engineers on it. I said, well, the problem was there were too many of those already involved and needed some more UGA ag engineers. So, Chairman Watson, Sam Watson.
Well, thank you, Representative Williams. Thank you for your comments on Savannah. And Representative Gaillard, we've sure enjoyed working with him this year. We've had some festivals that have not been held in a while, and I think it's important to note to think that every one of our state properties is going to return with 30 farmers every weekend, and the things that we may have remembered from 30 years ago, that's not going to happen because of the changes in agriculture, the changes in the way produce is growing. We need to always have place for Georgia producers, but the paradigm of how the original uses of these markets and that paradigm has shifted, but it doesn't. These markets are places where we can help folks create jobs. These are places where you can have, more. If you happen to expand In-Laws or Nikki Gregory, those are going to be jobs in those communities. And the facts, the Sam Watsons of the Representative Watsons of the world, that's where they do more business with those type of businesses now. It's just in bigger lots, and that means a lot of good things can happen if we'll make these investments.
Chairman Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, on the Safety 21, I see that you've got 124 loans. How many applications have you received for that program?
Well, it's well over 300 now. No, there's 300 we haven't served.
Good,
and
good.
What we've continued to do is encourage people to still make application, because we don't. There was a little rumor out, well, y'all already loaned all the money out. Well, yeah, there will come a time when we've loaned all the $55 million out, but if this body decides to do something else, or if when they determine what type of federal disaster response there's going to be, which could include allowing us the flexibility to move some of that federal money into this program, and we would rather people go ahead and make application and be standing in line in case we have an opportunity to serve them. No reason to shut off a sign up, because that would just slow the process should we get it restarted.
And is it not true that with this program we're making an investment in the farmers today and the farmers in the future, because this money will be coming back to us to do further loans for future young farmers that may come down the road?
That is correct. A very astute point. And ladies and gentlemen, what happens with, we did not populate our current portfolio with this $55 million. Because the portfolio of the Georgia Development Authority is one of the most stable and healthy organizations on the face of this globe. It's about basically a $70 million bank, and we do good work and have done it since the 30s. That's how long this enterprise actually reaches back. But we set the 55 up separately, and we'll maintain those books through the life of these loans over the course of 7 years. And then when those loans are satisfied, then we'll take those proceeds and populate the normal portfolio, which will speak to what Representative Watson said.
Well, thank you, Commissioner, on the job you've done on this. Currently today, this is still the only program that Georgia farmers have to help them get through Hurricane Michael. And I wish all of government would learn from what you've done there to get this program rolling and get it out to the people that need it quickly. Thank you for what you do.
Thanks, sir.
One more question, and we're going to be out of time. Representative Dickerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, thank you for your
Yes,
presentation. You talked about, if you can clarify for me, the $927,000, I think, in compensation that you asked for, and you only had, the budget only gave you $657,000.
Ms. Dixon,
Yes.
may I walk towards you, because I'm sorry, I'm not.
Okay, I can talk louder if you want me to.
The room is, no,
That's okay. You talked about $927,000 that you asked for, but yet was only budgeted for $657,000. Could you clarify that for me as to?
Yes, ma'am. When we were given instruction, as we always are, by the Office of Planning and Budget, usually the first part of the summer, as agencies, we're given that instruction. So at this past time, we were given the opportunity to ask for a 2% enhancement, which is 2% of our whole deal. And so we did so, and that represented $927,000, give or take. Then what we intended to do with the 927 was we need to make some investment in middle management training, which is just really important. And so we had decided to take $100,000 to do that, and then the balance we were going to invest in our people. And so that was we thought the number would come out 927. I honestly don't know why it's 657, but I intend to find out in the coming, hopefully during the subcommittee hearings, and because there's been a lot of moving parts the last 2 or 3 weeks as far as getting OPB settled, and I look forward to talking with them about that. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right, Commissioner,
Thank
that
you, Mr.
appears
Chairman.
to be all the questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have with us Director Homer Bryson with, I ain't sure what we call him now, GEMA, Homeland Security, all those things rolled into one. Good morning, how you?
Doing great, Mr. Chairman.
Glad to have you with us, and the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to see both chairmen here and the committee members here today. I bumped into Chairman Hill last week, and I said, I appreciate the opportunity to come and present today, but my question, Mr. Chairman, is what do you want me to talk about? All I have is statewide changes in my budget, and he says, I want you to talk mainly about the hurricane. So I'm going to very briefly run through my budget, and then we'll get into an update for you on the hurricane. Our budget is very straightforward. Again, it consists only of statewide changes. Beginning in Amended 19, located in the tracking document in Section 27.5, there's only one change. It's an increase of $891 to reflect an adjustment to agency policy premiums for DOAS-administered self-insurance programs. In FY20, again in Section 27.5 of the tracking document, there's two changes. The first, provide funds for a merit-based pay adjustment, employee recruitment and retention initiatives effective July 1 of 19. And for us, that's an increase of $44,808. The second reduces funds to reflect an adjustment in the employer share of the state health benefit plan by a reduction of 1%, and that totals $13,840. And on behalf of the employees of my agency, I want to thank Governor Kemp for his recommendation for a 2% increase for state employees. They do a lot of hard work, and usually you hear the bad stuff and you don't hear the good stuff. But they're hard-working, dedicated people, and they do a great service for our state. Now I'd like to give you some information related to Hurricane Michael. On Wednesday, October the 10th of 2018, Hurricane Michael moved into southwest Georgia as a Category 3 hurricane, packing 115-mile-an-hour winds with gusts recorded at or above 150 miles an hour. Michael raced to the northeast, spreading rainfall across most of Georgia and bringing tropical storm force winds from Columbus to Macon to Augusta and southward. Hurricane force winds were in all of southwest Georgia. Michael moved out of Georgia, eastern Georgia, the following morning, Thursday, October the 11th. A total of 108 counties were placed under a Georgia state of emergency by Governor Deal, and he followed that up by requesting federal assistance. President Trump granted Governor Deal's request for federal assistance in 69 counties on Sunday, October the 14th. Nearly 6,000 state employees responded, providing safety and security, relief assistance, and clearing debris from roadways. GEMA Homeland Security staff are still assigned full-time to providing assistance to the affected counties. They are working with our federal partners from FEMA, and that work will continue literally for years to come. While damage assessments will not be final until late fall of 2019, preliminary estimates range through the public assistance program at around $400 million. This includes $200 million in debris removal costs performed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in the 13 southwestmost counties, and approximately $110 million in power restoration costs to eligible EMCs, municipal electrics, and other eligible not-for-profit energy companies. The other big ticket item is the cost for emergency protective measures in all 69 counties and debris cost in the 56 counties not included in the core project. These costs are estimated at $66 million. I want to take a minute and talk in more detail about debris. Typically, the cost of debris removal falls under FEMA's Public Assistance Program and is a partially reimbursable expense after the county or city completes its work. Debris removal is the responsibility of the local government, and this is still the case for 56 of the 69 counties declared by the President. Our staff works closely with each county and city to get them reimbursed for their expenses regarding debris removal and processing. Now, in our 13 counties that were hit the hardest by Hurricane Michael, the damage was so severe that Georgia requested federal assistance to help with debris removal. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers engaged its debris removal contractor in southwest Georgia immediately following the storm. That contractor is still working in southwest Georgia today. They are now focused on removing leaning and hanging trees and construction and demolition debris. We estimate that this work will continue into next month. The Corps originally estimated there were 2.5 million cubic yards of debris in these 13 counties. To put this into context, 1 cubic yard of debris is about the size of a washing machine. To date, we have picked up more than 4.2 million cubic yards of debris. Getting southwest Georgia cleaned up is a key factor in recovering from the storm and getting back to a sense of normalcy. It's not there yet, but we've made incredible progress. Outside the traditional public assistance program, there were other devastating damages. More than $700 million of insured loss to Georgians, $2.5 billion in losses to Georgia farmers and timber growers, and the Small Business Administration has already made over 1,800 loans to small business and homeowners, totaling more than $46 million in our state. The impact on individuals and families was also catastrophic. Over 36,000 Georgia citizens in declared counties registered for financial assistance. Of those, 10,766 have already received more than $23 million from 3 different assistance programs. The efforts I've already discussed helped in the response and immediate recovery from the storm. But GEMA Homeland Security also focuses on the long-term resiliency of our communities. When we receive a federal declaration, like in Hurricane Michael, we also receive a portion of funds for hazard mitigation. These funds help prepare the state for future disasters. And typically, $1 spent on hazard mitigation saves the government $6 down the road. Hazard mitigation funds are used to purchase things like generators for local governments, warning sirens, and purchase of flood-prone properties. Georgia will receive approximately $60 million to pump right back into these stricken communities over the next few years and to make them more resilient for the next natural disaster. Hazard mitigation workshops were performed in the impacted area in November and December, and the application deadline is March the 1st of 2019. If you represent one of the declared counties, please encourage your local governments to apply for these funds. I'm going to repeat that because this is important. If you represent one of the declared counties, please encourage your local governments to apply for these funds. This is a big pot of money that will be distributed in the near future, and we want all impacted governments to benefit from it. The bottom line is we'll be here supporting the Southwest Georgia communities for years to come. We know our job is just beginning, and we will stand with each local government as they rebuild what was lost and work to regain a sense of normalcy. And that concludes my report, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
Okay, we've got a few, and first one up is Chairman Andy Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Director, the question about the radio connection and ability to communicate, two questions. First, how is the implementation of the new 911 commission undergoing? And then secondarily, in the wake of the emergency response that was needed after Hurricane Michael, how did the communication network work, and what strengths and weaknesses do you see in that?
It was an issue and a challenge. There were a number of 911 centers that lost power and were operating on generators, and we actually had one center that lost power completely, and those calls had to be diverted, so it was an issue. As we all know, interoperability and communications within the law enforcement public safety community is a challenge in our state, and we have grappled with that. I'm happy to report that we have identified a federal agency that is looking at this, and will be submitting a report to us hopefully sometime later this week that looks at the state capacity for interoperability in radios. And then a follow-up to that report will be one that looks at the state as a whole, involving the local entities with that. So hopefully we can take that information and formulate a plan moving forward on a system that is truly interoperable and enhance communications, emergency communications across the state. Our Emergency Communications Authority is young. It's getting its feet on the ground, and they're still an army of one at this point, but a lot of good work and a lot of groundwork is being laid there for us to move forward in that vein, and appreciate that question.
Chair Lady Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you and all of GEMA for what you did during that storm. I represent 3 of those counties, Thomas, Grady, and Decatur County, and Grady was one that lost everything. And the planning had been there. I will tell you, I'd been to lots of meetings. They had prepared, but you could not prepare for the size of that devastation. And y'all have been there, whether they needed a generator, you got to them. How you did it in less than 24 hours, I don't know. Roads weren't open. We had trees everywhere, and we still do. I appreciate the extension that we're getting. Our local governments, there's no way they could have handled the size and scope of this tragedy. And y'all were there, and you're still there, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for those kind words.
Senator Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would echo Representative Taylor's comments about the responsiveness. We were in contact many times and continue to do so with the issues that our local governments are dealing with, and the issue with the debris removal is still a point of contention for many of our local elected officials, and I appreciate your attempts to help in spite of the barriers that the federal government has thrown into this mix. You know, as somebody who's been in healthcare and understands when things go wrong, the most important thing you can do is to try to look at it and figure out how to prevent it in the future. And I know you guys are doing after action, you know, studies and meetings and so forth. One of the most common complaints I've gotten during the last or the first 3 or 4 weeks after the storm was both communication from the standpoint of the cellular systems not being stood back up as quickly as maybe it was done in some other areas in similar storms. I think you know, rural Georgia has a little bit of an inferiority complex when it comes to people thinking that they're important, and that was an area they felt like, you know, if it was a metro area, they would have had service back a lot quicker. The other is cable, and the complaints were, you know, everybody complains when they can't watch the news or the weather, but in our area, cable now is allowing people to work from home, and many small businesses depend on broadband for them to make a living. And we had lack of broadband service for 6 or 8 weeks after the storm, and some small businesses were just, you know, completely unable to do what they do to make a living and feed their families. And you know, I think those areas might not directly be related to what you do, but I think as part of the after action evaluation, I think the state needs to look at those areas and make sure that we implement some changes in order to hold some of these folks more accountable to response, just like Georgia Power and DOT and all the other areas that did remarkable work. I think these other folks that are making a living off of our constituents need to be held accountable and do what the state can do to encourage them to do a better job. So, thank you.
And I agree with that. And broadband is an issue on a blue sky day for rural Georgia, and this body has taken that issue up, and it's on the forefront. And I think as we address it from that angle, then the ability, once you build in a more robust infrastructure, then the ability to recover from a disaster becomes much, much more quicker and easier to accomplish. And on debris, I will say this. FEMA has been a great partner with us, and we have agreed the majority of the time, and we work lockstep, not only on Michael. Most people really don't realize how long it takes to close out a federal disaster, but we're actually working with FEMA now on 12 disasters totally in our state that date back as far as 2007. And again, they're a great partner now, and they're going to be a great partner in the future. And we agree 98% of the time. We just have an honest disagreement on how to close out the debris mission in southwest Georgia. It's still an ongoing conversation, and we're going to do our best to get what we can for our citizens, what we believe they deserve.
All right, that appears to be all the questions. Thank you, and thank you to your team for the response, not only for Hurricane Michael, but every time something doesn't go exactly right, y'all are always Johnny on the spot, and we appreciate that on behalf of us individually and as our constituents back home too. So thank you, Homer, and appreciate it, and Godspeed, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. We are running just a little bit ahead, so we'll just keep on going. And at this point now, the Secretary of State's office, Secretary of State Raffensperger, will come in to make his presentation. If doorkeepers let the Secretary know we're ready for him to come in. Good morning, Mr. Secretary. Welcome, and the podium is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman England and Chairman Hill, for letting us come and present our budget before the committee. Thank you, members of the committee. It's good to be back in this room. It's my honor to present the budget from the Secretary of State's office. So, try that one. There we go. Gotcha. Thanks. Okay. I'm going to cover all of the divisions: corporations, elections, professional licensing, securities and charities, and investigations. So let's start with the corporations division. I believe that we have one of the best corporate filing systems in the country, and we continue to upgrade and build upon it. Our eCore system went live on July 1st, 2015. We have several very effective annual renewal options for corporations: Georgia SOS app, the one-click annual renewal, the express annual renewal, the one-click bulk annual renewal, and traditional paper applications. eCore's efficiency has improved our corporation call centers as well. We have had a drastic reduction in hold times. From January 8th to January 10th, customers filed over 20,000 registrations each day. Our average time frame to process these registrations is 4 days. As of yesterday, we had 167,739 registrations, which of course includes renewals and first-time registers. This is a record number of processes at this point in time in our annual renewal season. Our next division is elections. Our elections divisions continues to reduce red tape and increase accessibility through e-government solutions. The online voter registration system, OLVR, allows eligible citizens to register to vote or update their voter record from either their home computers or their smartphones. We also use the Georgia SOS app, which allows voters to review their sample ballot, find their polling location, change their address, and track their absentee ballot. We strive to make the election process voter-friendly. We are pleased to continue our Student Ambassador program. This program has been a tremendous success. It allows high school students the opportunity to come to the Capitol and meet with their legislators, gain experience, and promote and encourage voter registration. This year, we have over 200 schools that are statewide and 2,000 students participating. It's our goal to have every high school participating, so let our office know if you have any schools in your district that would like to join. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you. Our elections division has had a lot of growth and changes over the past few years. From 2016 to 2018, we've had a 62% increase in non-white new voters. We almost equaled voter turnout for a presidential election during the last midterm. In 2018, there were approximately 340,000 first-time voters. We enhanced security on the voter registration system, eNet, with a two-factor authentication, odd-hour alerts, expiring passwords, and anti-brute force defenses. Our IT team did an outstanding job of hacker testing on our computer systems and did an in-house cybersecurity training and testing with phishing drills. We've also worked with the Department of Homeland Security to promote DHS inspection of the county offices for physical security assessments. Our goal is to be very thorough and to continue to have safe and secure elections. We also want to be accessible to voters as possible, and I believe our team has done a tremendous job with both of these things. Part of the governor's budget also allocates $150 million for new voting systems. This is a valuable investment that's going to help us move our voting systems forward towards more secure, accessible, fair elections. That said, we're very excited to move into the 2019 elections. Next is our professional licensing division. The Secretary of State's office supports 41 boards, and we currently have 478,606 individuals that are licensed in the state of Georgia through the Secretary of State's office. Both initial and renewal application processing times continue to hold steady at approximately 17 days despite rising numbers. Over the last few fiscal years, we've also dedicated a large amount of PLB resources to nurses. By having these funds directed towards this board, it cuts down on call times, improves processing times, and increases enforcement. We've seen a rise in the number of cases that we investigate, and that's why in our investigation segment of the budget, we've made room for 2 additional investigators to help increase efficiency even more. These boards pay a fee, and we want to make sure their experience with our office is productive. We are very thankful that the governor's budget funds these 2 new positions. Per the OPP's recommendations through zero-based budgeting process, investigations became its own program in 2016. Other than salary adjustments for statewide law enforcement in 2018, the division has maintained a flat budget increase despite a very large increased caseload. We experienced a 100% increase from 2015 of 222 cases to 2017 with 443 cases in nursing referrals, which basically doubled. During 2018, we had 403 nursing case referrals. Overall, from 2015 to 2018, we experienced an increase of just over 34% in our total caseloads. Through the first 6 months of this fiscal year, we have already received 122 nursing case referrals. Of the cases opened and closed in fiscal 19, the average time to complete an investigation is 42 days. For all cases closed in fiscal 19, the average time to complete a state election board's securities, charities, or corporations investigation is 165 days, with PLB cases averaging at 188 days. Total fiscal 19 referrals for the first 6 months are at 831 cases. We will continue to work with you and OPP on monitoring the workload and see to what extent any future resources we may need. Last is our Securities and Charities divisions. The Securities and Charities Division continues to increase its efforts to detect, prevent, and redress violations of the Securities and Charities Acts and rules. In 2018, 221,320 individuals registered as financial advisors and 4,804 companies registered as financial investment firms with us. We also received and processed over 6,208 security offerings and 8,515 organizations and their fundraisers. In addition to registering, we also educate the public on investor and donor protection. We continue to coordinate with the Georgia State University Law School's Investor Protection Clinic. We are key members of Georgia's Financial Exploitation of At-Risk Adult Work Group, having partnered with the Adult Protective Services, GBI, FBI, and other law enforcement agencies like the SEC to combat fraud. We have collaborated with the SEC to host the first Investing in America Town Hall to Atlanta back in June of 2018, which was held in the Georgia State University College of Law. The division facilitated securing approximately 500 attendees. The division investigates cases involving potential violation of the Securities Acts to secure a free and competitive securities market in Georgia. The division also pursues enforcement against unregistered charities and individuals who are improperly soliciting donations in the name of charity. Not only has the Securities Division increased more targeted enforcement, but it has become a national leader in crowdfunding through the Invest Georgia Exemption Program, which was created in 2011 through the General Assembly. This program allows for nonprofit businesses formed under Georgia law to raise up to $5 million from Georgia resident investors. This in turn allows investors to pour more money into Georgia businesses. To date, 71 issuers have filed notice under the IGA for potential raise of $155 million. Again, thank you for allowing me to come and present to you today. I'll stand for questions.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, we've got a couple of questions. Well, it's starting to light up like a Christmas tree. And our first question will be Representative Mary Margaret Oliver.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
You have inherited the unenviable task of being a defendant in a good many lawsuits on election issues. The exact match provision has not been upheld by any of the federal courts in Georgia or across the nation. Do you intend to defend the exact match provision? And what is your responsibility towards oversight of election abuses on an exact match provision for the 159 election directors across Georgia?
We intend to defend every lawsuit that we are named in. That's my job as Secretary of State, working with our SAGs or the Attorney General's office. But as it relates to specific legislative changes that we may need to make in light of court rulings and other issues like that, we will look at that and propose, legislative changes, to the General Assembly this coming session.
May I follow up with one question? Your budget doesn't show me where your legal fees are. Can you tell me what the comparison of your legal fees are for this budget year and last budget year, considering the litigation of election form issues?
I don't have those numbers for you, but I'll get those for you. And back to the committee.
Okay, Representative Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I'm over here. The budget includes money for new voting machines, and there was a commission that was established prior to you assuming this role. Are you satisfied with the recommendations of that commission, or are you going to go further?
I'm satisfied with that commission. It met for 9 months, and it was a bipartisan. Also, it brought in the very important stakeholders. It brought in state senators, state representatives, the Secretary of State's office, but also brought in someone from the disabled community, but also your county election supervisors from throughout the state. And so those people worked together, brought in presenters, brought in experts, and they issued a report, and that was voted on with a 13-3 vote. I think now at the point we need to move that forward, and I believe that there'll be legislation in this upcoming session for the General Assembly's consideration.
And assuming that the budget goes through as proposed, what is your timeline from putting out the RFPs to us having this system up and going?
Well, it would be my preference that the General Assembly, moves this bill through, that it would be effective upon the governor signing, so that would accelerate the process. It's very ambitious. I don't believe that we'll be able to secure these new voting machines for the fall 2019 elections, but if we could secure some of those to actually do municipal elections in some of the cities throughout Georgia, I don't want to say it's a test run because those votes would count, but it would also let us iron out any issues or any bugs we might have, so we'd be ready for the presidential primary in 2020 and the fall elections of 2020. It's a very ambitious schedule. We'll have to do a lot of training, and that's in that $150 million ask, up to $150 million ask. But we'll be moving quickly and expeditiously and making sure we do not just secure the machines, but the training with all the county election boards.
Thank you. Senator Tillery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. Thank you for your presentation this morning. Combing your budget, looks like there's a $153,000 increase for personnel. I think we're going to be very careful as we're increasing personnel because that's a long-term cost. It looks like those are on investigators. Can you explain that and the need for it as we move forward in this budget process?
Well, if you look at the caseload that we've had, the caseload has about doubled in the last few years, but we've not increased the number of investigators. So this increase would be, even though the caseload has doubled, and we have about 35, 37 investigators, if you look at that percentage increase, it's much nominal. But if you look at some of the wait times that have extended out, so if you consider that people that have a license, they're paying for the privilege of that license in the state of Georgia, and if no different than as a business owner, you want to make sure that your customer gets prompt, responsive service. So if we can reduce that investigative time and give some of those license holders a more expeditious answer, we think that it meshes well with Georgia's philosophy of being pro-business, pro-professional license holder, and I think will accelerate the customer experience.
Can I ask a follow-up, Mr. Chairman? Can you explain to me what those investigators would be doing? I guess that's more of my question.
There will be many times, every 2 years when we have an election, they could be investigating into questions about elections, any potential election impropriety. But apart from elections, they spend the bulk of their time investigating licensing issues or infractions of a security law, so that our job is to make sure, like for charities, for securities, that the law is followed and we don't have bad actors. So they'll be investigating that. But primarily, from what I've heard in the last year, we've some of the licenses, such as the nursing, they would like to have a faster response time, and we believe that by adding 2 investigators, we'll be able to improve the response times for the nursing boards to get resolution quicker. I think that'll be very important.
Chairman Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over here, Ms. Secretary, in the corner, right over here. My question is also about the voting machines, and I believe you alluded to this earlier, but I want to ask it directly. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding 17 or more years ago, the last time the state purchased voting machines for the whole state, all 159 counties, even though the counties actually run and cover the day-to-day and election-to-election cost of our elections in Georgia, I think the state spent all the upfront money to purchase that last round of voting machines. So I know we all love to hear from our county commissioners, particularly when they're fussing at us, but I just want to make sure that your office feels that that $150 million, as I understand to be in the budget, is likely to be enough that we can cover the whole state with whatever kind of system that we purchase.
Yes, that's our intent, that would cover the entire state of Georgia for not just the purchase of the hardware, but also the new electronic poll books that will be required, and then training and outreach to all the county election boards. That's be very important, because if you talk to any county election supervisor and ask what they're spending on training right now with the systems that they have, now you're talking about bringing in a new system, to be able to come alongside them and support them to make sure that we have an efficient and accurate election. I think that is good for all Georgians.
Chairman Reinders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good to see you, Mr. Secretary. As it relates to the voting equipment, I have heard a lot from the people, the disability community, talk about your plan or your vision in making sure that everybody has access and the needs that they meet, their needs are met when it comes to being able to vote with the people with disabilities of various types.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To your question, or to your point, that's very true. When we brought the new machines in 2002 with Secretary of State Kathy Cox, it was a uniform system for all folks, disabled and non-disabled. And so we have that in place right now. Some states have actually moved forward recently, and they've had machines for the disabled community and then machines for the non-disabled community, and they ended up in lawsuits both in Maryland and Ohio when they did that. Because we already have a uniform system, we would be open to a legal challenge on that. But also, from the standpoint, we believe that you'll get a better result, a more accurate result, and actually be able to move people through the lines faster when you have a ballot marking device. So we don't have to try to cipher out what someone meant with stray marks or what happened and have it spit out. At the end of the day, both systems, whether it would be hand marked or with a ballot marking machine, are going to have an optical scanner. So that process through our system will allow post-election audits, and that's a very important thing, so we can do a post-election pre-certification audit, so that when we have election, even though sometimes we think we ran the race, the great race, but we end up short, well, we'll be able to certify with an audit that, yes, Bob, yes, Mary, you did lose the race, or that other person really did win the race, and then we know with confidence that we've got an accurate result. So it's really a double, check on our system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Cantrell.
Chairman, thank you. Mr. Secretary, good to see you. I'm pleased to see, number one, that you're continuing Governor Kemp's Student Ambassador Program. As someone who sits on the board of a school that's participated, whose students have participated in that program from the beginning, it's been a huge, huge help for those students to understand how government works and how it should work. My question for you is, as we look at the budget numbers, could you just briefly encapsulate for us what you would say? You got a big job in front of you. What would you say are your top 3 or 4 priorities, the first things you're going to do as our Secretary of State?
Well, number one is securing the new voting machines and implementing the new voting machines with training. I think also looking at wherever we can streamline licensing would be very important. Also, what I want to look at wherever we can get reciprocity. I'm a registered engineer, and I'm registered in over 30 different states, and I'm a registered general contractor in about 9 states. We have reciprocity. So whatever we can do that with other professions, I think that's very important. It's business friendly. It's also allows someone that moves into this state, perhaps their spouse gets a job here in Georgia, and they move in and they have to, get a new license. I think that's very important to do. Also, whatever we could do for veterans or the spouse of a active military moving into the state of Georgia, I think that would be very important. So that would be something that I would look very favorably on, because I think it fits, with what we've been doing in Georgia. Really, since the end of World War II, Georgia's been moving forward for a long period of time. We want to continue that, positive momentum forward. I think those are 2 very key issues. Then also, I do want to implement being able to renew your corporation for up to 3 years. That was a bill that passed through the General Assembly a few years ago with strong bipartisan support.
Thank you.
Representative Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Over here. I have a kind of a follow-up question to Chairman Fleming on the 150. That's a big number. It's an extremely important part of our system of government on getting these voting machines right. Obviously, there'll be other expenses that go along with that. What other things do you anticipate that 150 needing to cover?
Well, as I said, it's not just the machine itself, but also electronic poll books that go with that. Those all need to be upgraded. But then also the training component is huge. If you, we would have that Secretary of State Kathy Cox talked down in the Macon meeting at the SAFE Commission about what they had for training allocated in the 2002 time. I think it was in the range of $2 to $3 million. But since then, we've had inflation. We also have had our population almost, I won't say double, but it's up probably 50%. So it's a huge increase in population. And so we know that the training budget to get out there to the county election board, that the Secretary of State's office on our own, on our own nickel, it won't be in the 150 million, but we want to actually have our state staff go out and get into the districts, every district, bipartisan districts, Republican, Democrat, doesn't really matter where it is. So county election parties, Kiwanis, Lions Club, and bring a machine out there and do some, training for folks, for the average citizen. This is the first time they'll see that, so that they understand what they'll be looking at, in the upcoming elections moving forward. So that'll be part of what we want to do. And then also we'll have to look at decommissioning the old machines. Thank you.
Representative Bruce.
Look at your text messages.
Representative Bruce.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to follow up also on the voting machines. Does the $150 million in any way at all reflect a decision that has already been made as to what machines you're going to be getting?
No, I've not made any decision, and we've not even drawn up the RFP. We are working on it, but I've not seen that yet. I hope to see that in a few weeks. But what I want is I want an open and fair process. Right now, if you look in America, there's 7 different voting technologies used throughout the nation. One of those is the DRE, so that leaves us 6 net different types of systems. Many of the vendors make hand-marked paper ballot systems and a ballot marking system, so there's probably 6 different companies out there, maybe 5. But we want to have an RFP process, and we get back as many proposals as possible, and then we'll evaluate that. I don't have a predetermined outcome. I want a fair process. I mentioned that I come out of the construction industry, and I come out of the subcontracting industry, and so in the subcontracting industry, you get beat up by the general contractors. And so no one ever pays a premium for me. And so I want to make sure that we get it right, and that the technology's right, but we also are going to be looking at that price component, because that is a budget, that's a line holder right now that says up to 150 million. If we can buy that out and get a great system at less than that, I'll be all over that. That's a good question. Thank you, sir.
Okay, one follow-up question. The process that you're going to put in play to prepare the request, will it include a paper consideration of a paper ballot that can be read electronically, and then the paper ballot would then be stored in case of the need to recount.
Yes, with a ballot marking machine, you will have a paper ballot. Then you put it into an optical scanner, and it drops into a box about the size of this lower level here. And then, so when we have to do a recount, we can, open that up with a security key, come back in, and you can run those through the optical scanner again. And we also can use those for a post-election pre-certification audit. So there will be a paper ballot.
Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Question, you talked about your licenses. The military bills, there was 2 or 3 passed out of this House in the last 2 sessions, but I found that on the website, you don't let the military know what our law says in regards to them. And so it becomes very cumbersome. I run into a lot of military people that are not familiar at all with the fact that if they're licensed in their state, that we deal with them while we do the background. I would just suggest that maybe we could market it a little better.
Thank you for that. I was not aware of that, so we'll get working on that, because I share I think the entire body shares your desire to make sure that our veterans and our military folks understand that that's available for them. So that will make that as an action item. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chairman Welch. Okay. He waves. Well, Mr. Secretary, that appears to be all the questions that we have.
Thank you, sir.
You've done pretty good for your first hazing.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next presenter is going to be our Department of Revenue Commissioner, Ms. Lynn Riley. We'll give just a second for the transition. She's headed up toward the front. Well, good morning, Madam Commissioner. Glad to have you with us, and the podium is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and good morning, Chairman Hill and members of the committee. I welcome the opportunity to be before you here today and bring you some updates on the activities of the Department of Revenue and to review the budget presentation and forecasts that have been presented by Governor Kemp. The Department of Revenue remains very busy on an annual basis. In fiscal year 2018, we processed 8.3 million unique tax returns. We renewed registrations for 9.7 million motor vehicles. We performed 6,700 unique alcohol inspections, and that was a 39% increase over fiscal year 15. We processed close to 6,000 unclaimed property claims, and we put into place a new claim processing online system, and that achieved a 34% increase over fiscal year 15. We also completed 103,000 unique audits in fiscal year 2018, a 61% increase over fiscal year 15. We've been working diligently on a number of legislative items that were enacted in 2018. First and foremost, we're putting together the components for the Timber Tax Credit Program, and we're very grateful for the assistance that we received from the Georgia Forestry Commission, as well as the Department of Agriculture, as we put the unique components together, and we hope and intend to open the portal on March 1st for applicants to be able to apply for the timber tax credit. We also are putting together centralized assessment functions in alignment with the Qualified Timber Property Program that was passed by the voters in the state of Georgia in November of 2018, and we will have that system up and ready to for property owners as of January 1, 2020. We have been very grateful to work with the Department of Agriculture on GATE program enhancements, and we heard Commissioner Black speak about that a little earlier as well. We've also assisted Commissioner Bryson and others in the GEMA world with the preparation for collection of the E911 fees that we will collect at the department and distribute to the local governments for the use in public safety communications. We are preparing our systems now for the additional collection of sales tax from remote sellers online in light of the ruling by the Supreme Court in 2018 on the Wayfair case and House Bill 61 that was passed by this body in 2018. And we are also getting ready to launch our drives system in May of 2019, which has been a joint initiative with the Department of Driver Services, Georgia Technology Authority, the Office of Budget and Planning, and others that have helped us put this signature project together that will truly benefit our taxpayers and our motorists come May of 2019. We are putting the connections together with 159 counties as we speak, so that increased functionality and state-of-the-art system will be available for us. The governor's recommendation for amended FY19 is primarily around forest land protection grants. The proposal includes $35.7 million for forest land protection grants. This will allow the department to catch up and be able to reimburse counties that have put grants with the department on a more timely basis. Also, for the amended 19 budget, there are some appropriations that are contemplated for our Taxpayer Services Division that will allow us to enhance our technology and add to our workforce to be able to more timely process complicated tax returns. Changes for our fiscal year 2020 budget also include merit-based pay adjustments for the valued employees that we have at the Department of Revenue, and I'm grateful that we will have the opportunity to reward them accordingly. And also has appropriations contemplated in our tax compliance area that will help us do our enforcement for compliance with the Wayfair ruling and remote sales tax collection, as well as allow us to provide some enhancements to our technology that again will provide us with better system processing and more automation of our more complicated processes that have to do with tax credits and other functionality for the department. We also have an appropriation in our tax policy area that will allow us to secure more legal assistance that will help us in our compliance efforts on our new responsibilities in sales tax and tax reform compliance. And finally, additional appropriations in FY20 in our Taxpayer Services Division that will assist us in hiring more professionals and upgrading our integrated tax system that will allow us for greater functionality. Mr. Chairman, that's a brief report of all the activities that are going on at the department, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you or the members of the committee might have.
Oh, we've got, it looks to be 45, 50, 55, 60 questions. So
oh,
you ready?
My goodness.
It's a good thing we're running a little bit ahead of time, so you got plenty of time. So, Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, thank you for what you do. I really appreciate your efforts and work over the years. One question, but two parts. Just help me understand the logistics of collecting sales tax from online sales. And the second part really is how much have we collected or how much do we anticipate collecting in online sales in your reference to the Supreme Court rulings and our passage of the legislation?
Certainly. Thank you, Chairman Watson, for that question. The department is going to need to update and change some of the components of our integrated tax solution software to allow for greater registration by online retailers that are not specific to the state of Georgia, but have sales into the state of Georgia. So we will have a greater capacity and thereby have a greater workload that we will have to accommodate. We also contemplate that there will be additional audit and review work that will need to have to be performed to assist new sellers in their compliance efforts. So a workforce addition will be needed to assist those that might not understand how to comply with the state of Georgia sales tax requirements. And since we have so many unique sales tax rates in our 159 counties, there'll be additional work in educating those that'll be now required to comply. As far as forecasting sales tax collection enhancements, we believe that, as you heard yesterday from the state economist, that we'll see that come in over time, as has been projected.
Representative Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Commissioner. I just wanted to ask about on your website, making sure that when new people come to Georgia and they experience the Welcome to Georgia tax when they have to buy their tags and title, that we have a way for them to calculate or have some knowledge of how much that's going to cost them, because that's a complaint that I continually get from new people coming in to Georgia.
Thank you for that question, Representative Hughley. I know we've spoken of it earlier. The website for the Department of Revenue actually does have a calculator for estimation of the TAVT that a motorist would be required to pay when they come into the state, or for them to predict and project what it might cost should they be looking to buy a new vehicle. We'll do a better job, as we have discussed, on marketing that and making sure that folks, new or existing residents in the state of Georgia, have that ability to use that functionality.
Chairman Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just more of a statement plus a little question, but over the years we have seen the Department of Revenue leading as a state agency compared to a lot of the other states in preventing tax fraud at the state level, and I was just wondering if you could maybe bring us up to date, for the new members, a little history, and then bring us up to date of where we are and perhaps some ballpark numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. The Department of Revenue has excelled in protecting the Treasury of the state of Georgia and taxpayers from identity theft and refund fraud. In 2015, we had a significant breach by a tax preparation software firm that put all of us on alert. And over the 4 years following that breach, the department has worked closely with the Internal Revenue Service, the tax preparation software industry, and our partner states in developing a safety net, if you will. We participate very actively in the security summit that was created by the IRS commissioner in 2015, and we work with a information sharing commission that oversees real-time dissemination of information when incidences of fraud are detected anywhere in the tax ecosystem, immediately communicated to all taxing agencies, and then we lock our systems down. The frightening problem is that now that we've become more proficient in preventing individual income tax fraud, we're now seeing experience in business tax fraud. We had a very unfortunate episode just a couple of months ago where a citizen chose to create a fictitious business account with the department, submitted fictitious payroll information, unfortunately compromised authentic bank account information to use to make fictitious payments with the Department of Revenue. Fortunately, we have very sensitive technology and fraud detection systems that are in place within our integrated tax solution. We were able to immediately detect this activity and prohibit over $20 million of potential money being released to this perpetrator. These are some of the incidences, and this is a small single example of the challenges that we face in security of confidential information that is put to us to take care of, as well as making sure that no dollars go out of the state's treasury that shouldn't be going out. This year, for the 2018 year, we were down significantly on the amount of fraud that we had to block. I think because of our efforts in this area that we have not become a state that folks want to come and try to compromise. I think we have been effective in messaging that we take it very seriously, our responsibility, and so we've deterred quite a bit of activity as time has gone on. It was about $32 million in attempts that we identified and blocked from going out of the state treasury. But we can't drop our defenses. We are very concerned that every time we put up a good guard, the fraudsters are finding a new place to try. So we're very grateful for the investment that is contemplated in this budget for FY20 that will help us continue to be diligent in that effort. Thank you for that question.
Representative Bruce.
Hi there.
Good morning.
Do you anticipate in any way the changes that happened in Washington with regard to the tax bill law somehow confusing people as they complete the state? Because there's all kinds of stuff out there and people are confused.
Thank you for that question, Representative Bruce. I do believe that it's going to be more challenging for taxpayers to file their tax returns this year, not only because of the partial government shutdown, which is reducing the ability at the federal level for taxpayers to receive guidance, but also because of the significance in changes in tax law. I do believe that the Georgia changes have been much more clear, and I think the activities that the department has performed in outreach will make it easier for Georgia taxpayers to be compliant with their tax returns. And we're optimistic that they will be able to get the assistance they need at the federal level as well.
So what do you get when you cross a car dealer and a politician? You get the Senate Pro Tem Miller.
And he's a good-looking rascal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee for allowing me to pop in. I want you to know that I've been watching all these meetings in my office and trying to conduct a little business. I have, but I really scooted down here for a purpose. In my business, in my vocation, my day job, we deal with the Department of Revenue on an ongoing basis. And I've told this story a couple times, and forgive me if you've heard it, but literally, I can recall the days calling the Department of Revenue, and we would be on hold for hours at a time. And I thought it was ridiculous. This is several years ago, 8 or 10 years ago. And I thought the people in my office were not being truthful with me, that they couldn't get through. So first thing I did, I came in one morning, 9 or 10 o'clock, when I, finally got to work. I was going to leave around 1, but never mind. But I came in, I called the Department of Revenue, and the lady answered, the recording answered the phone and said, "Thank you for calling the Georgia Department of Revenue. Your approximate wait time is 7 hours and 45 minutes. Oh, my gosh. And I want you to, the members of this committee, to understand that this has been an absolute turnaround under the commissioner's leadership. And, when thousands of people call from, just in my business, in the automobile industry, every day. I mean, thousands of people transact business every day, and every one of them need a title, and every one of them need a tag. And it's been an absolute turnaround from the constituent point of view, and I hear that on an ongoing basis. So I'd like to commend the commissioner for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I'd also like for the commissioner, if I could indulge the committee for a moment more, to talk to us about the DRIVE project, the DRIVE program, and how it's been impactful on the constituents and the service that the Department of Revenue provides to the taxpayers in Georgia, because that's where the rubber meets the road. And if I could, if you don't mind.
Do you have a current audit before the commissioner? Is that the reason? I mean, we haven't seen you in 2 days. You fly in here because she's here, and then all of a sudden you
Mr. Chairman, They all vote and they all buy cars.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, President Pro Tem, for your question and the opportunity to elaborate a little further on the Drives project. We are very proud of the progress that we made on this collaborative project. When I first came to the department, it was contemplated to upgrade and modernize the Gratis technology that was put in place in the late 1990s, which still operates on a green screen DOS-based mainframe platform. We're thrilled that the 21st Century State-of-the-Art system will go live on May 28th, and we're working diligently with 159 counties to make sure not only they have the connectivity, but they have the functionality, the training, and the comfort level that they'll be able to serve their taxpayers come May 28th. We've had a great deal of collaboration with the Auto Dealers Association because they do have such daily interaction through the electronic title and registration and other functionality of the system. So the $100+ million that the members of the General Assembly have invested will be put to excellent use. And we are just phase one of this project. The Department of Driver Services will be following us shortly after May 28th to modernize their functionality. And on a shared platform, we believe we're being good stewards of the tax dollars of the state of Georgia by using a shared technology base that will be cross-functional going forward in a way that we can better serve our taxpayers. So we're looking forward to communicating through the session and providing information for your constituents on the new functionality that will be available when they have to renew their motor vehicle registrations or change things of insurance registration or apply for a new title when that is needed when they purchase a new vehicle. And we look forward to being able to cut the ribbon in May.
Okay, don't see any further questions. Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Well,
thank you, Mr.
Hold
Chairman.
on just a second.
I had a
Carville's
follow-up
always
question.
got to have last say.
One more quick question, if I could. So, again, just so the people in this committee and this chamber are clear, this is not just people that buy cars. This is everybody who changes a title, changes a tag, renews on an ongoing basis. And how many transactions does that represent?
In FY18, we did 9.7 million unique registration renewals in the state of Georgia. We expect well over 10 million when we go online, well over 2 million title transactions every year, not to mention our interaction with the public safety departments across the state that will query this system on a daily basis to determine the accuracy of registrations that are operating on this road. Thank you.
Mr. Pro Tem, you finished now? Okay, all right, just make sure. Your colleagues up here want to ask you questions. Chairman Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Commissioner, thank you so much for being here. A real quick question, and you may not know the detail of it, but I wanted to know the status of the collections of a fee, an assessment fee that the General Assembly levied against all adult entertainment establishments in the state. I know that has been pending in litigation, but I wanted to get an update of that. We passed that legislation back in 2016, I believe, to be effective in 17. I know that it's been in litigation, but if you could provide a status update on that, and if you don't have that today, please update me later.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not have exact numbers with me. We have received some payments from the entertainment industry that is affected by that legislation. However, as you are aware, we are currently in litigation, and the Attorney General's office is representing the Department of Revenue on that. But I will follow up and get you the 2018 compliance data.
Mr. Chairman, may I follow up? The reason why I ask is just so the public knows is that this assessment is actually there to generate revenue to protect young boys and girls against sex trafficking in the state of Georgia and for rehabilitation purposes. With the Super Bowl coming in to the state, I think it's imperative that we be vigilant in terms of the protection of our youth and that we fight against this very nefarious crime that exists within our state.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Henson.
Thank you very much. And just going back to the previous comment on the entertainment, if I'm not mistaken, people under the age of 21 are not allowed in these clubs at all. And they don't allow young children in them at all. And I do want to make that statement instead of everyone thinking that young kids are allowed into the clubs. The second question always goes back to serving of liquor. And the question goes to why have we never imposed this entertainment tax on any other establishments except, you know, the adult entertainment establishments?
Thank you for that question, Representative. The department may only enforce compliance on a business that is subject to that legislation. To date, the referendum that was passed by the voters of the state of Georgia applies to the adult entertainment industry, and so that is where the department is focusing their efforts. Thank you.
Okay, that appears to be all of them. So those 45, 50, 55, whatever it was, I guess when they saw the pro tem come in, a lot of them dropped out knowing his distinguished self would cover most of their interests there. So thank you. Thank you for the
Mr.
job you're
Chairman.
doing, and we'll see you soon. Our next presenter, we are running a fair amount ahead, and I know Commissioner Fitzgerald is on her way. So I'm just going to ask you to stay at ease in your seats nearby. And as soon as she's here, we'll get started on the next presentation. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you would please take your seats. Please take your seats. All righty. Commissioner Fitzgerald, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm sure some other folks will be drifting back in. Everybody took advantage of that little break we had, so I'm sure they'll be drifting back in here in just a minute. But thank you for being with us, and the microphone and podium is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everyone. It's consider a privilege to be standing here again and presenting the DBHDD budget for amended fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20 to all of you this morning. I do just want to take a moment and reflect on the transition, because it gives me an opportunity to just offer up some gratitude. It has been a very smooth transition for us, and I just want to acknowledge the support from Governor Deal and Teresa McCartney and the OPB team prior to Governor Kemp coming in. And they left us in good hands with Lee Wright and Melissa and Will and the team. And can't tell you how much we appreciate that as we head into really an exciting new administration with Governor Kemp. And we've had the opportunity, I want to thank Greg Dozier and Lori Smith as they're putting the team together.